The morning I was supposed to be at my sister's wedding, I received a text from my father that stopped my heart. He wrote, "You're not allowed to attend Sophia's wedding." My hands shook, and I dropped the coffee mug I had been holding. My mother called right after, not with concern but with a warning. "We expect you to stay home and behave." Can you imagine being told your own family doesn't want you at one of the most important days of your sister's life? Only if this story speaks to your heart, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your city or country and the local time you're watching this. I'm Emily Carter, 30 years old, a high-ranking officer in the U.S. Army. And this was the night that changed everything for our family. It's the kind of betrayal that makes you question every memory you thought was safe. I still remember standing outside our family home, the morning sun too bright, mocking even, and seeing the limo pull up for Sophia without me. But this isn't just about being left out. It's about the way they made it public, the subtle smiles from distant relatives, and the shame intended to humiliate me for choosing a career over being a perfect daughter. Only if this story truly resonates with you, I want you to leave a comment sharing where you are and what time it is right now. This was the beginning of a night that would force me to reconsider everything about my family, my place in it, and the way I had to reclaim my dignity. Let me take you back to where it all started. I remember walking back into my apartment after the phone calls, my uniform pressed and neat, but my heart heavier than any pack I had ever carried in the field. The walls around me felt closer, like they were shrinking in on my frustration, every photo on the mantel a reminder of memories now tinged with betrayal. I tried calling Michael, my husband, hoping for some support, but he sounded hesitant, like he did not know what to say, without crossing some invisible line my family had drawn. My sister, Sophia, who had always been my closest confidant, now seemed untouchable behind her perfectly styled hair and the carefully rehearsed smiles she wore for the wedding photographs. I paced the living room, trying to breathe, each inhalation sharp and tight, feeling the unfairness stack like boxes of orders I had carried in Iraq, heavy and unyielding. The coffee table, cluttered with invitations and half-open cards, became a physical representation of the chaos in my mind, a stark contrast to the orderly life I had fought to build as a soldier. I thought about my parents, John and Margaret, their words echoing in my head, the subtle edge of superiority and judgment, the way they had used my sacrifice and career as ammunition to belittle me, to make me feel smaller than Sophia on a day that should have been joyous for all of us. I could hear the laughter from the street, faint but persistent, the sound of celebration I was barred from, each note a punch of injustice that left my chest tight and my hands clenching. My younger sister Olivia called, trying to explain the reasoning my parents gave, but the words were empty, excuses thin as paper, failing to mask the favoritism that had become painfully obvious over the years. I remembered Daniel, my brother, nodding awkwardly during a phone call, his silence louder than any argument, a testament to the passive complicity that seemed to run in the family veins. The evening sun was fading, casting long shadows across the apartment, and I knew I could not stay there wallowing in the unfairness. I had to act, to do something that asserted my dignity, even if it meant standing alone against my family. In a moment of clarity, I pulled out a gift I had prepared long ago, not with the intent to provoke, but as a statement, a reminder that absence did not equal irrelevance. I wrapped it carefully, every fold precise, every ribbon placed with intention, knowing that when Sophia opened it, it would speak volumes without me uttering a single word. I drove to the wedding venue, parked at a discreet distance, and watched the scene from afar. The laughter, the chatter, the joyous reunions of relatives I had grown up with, now tinted with the bitter knowledge of exclusion. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, my mind racing through every possible reaction, every outcome, the anticipation sharp like a drill pressing into bone. The decision was mine to make, a test of patience and strategy, something I had learned in the military, that timing and positioning could change the trajectory of events, that patience could turn a disadvantage into power. I stepped out of the car, holding the gift like a shield, a symbol of autonomy in a situation designed to rob me of control. Every footstep toward the entrance was measured, deliberate, my heart pounding but my expression calm, composed, the calm exterior a mask for the storm beneath. I placed the gift where it would be found, where it would command attention without my presence, and walked away, each step a reclaiming of personal agency, a silent protest against the narrative my family had tried to write for me. As I left the grounds, the evening air crisp against my face, I felt a mixture of liberation and trepidation, knowing that what was about to unfold could shift the power dynamics in ways no confrontation could. I drove back to my apartment, the city lights blurring past, each turn of the wheel a heartbeat, each red light a moment to reflect on the choice I had made. My phone buzzed intermittently, messages from Michael, from Olivia, from distant cousins, each one a thread in the tapestry of tension that stretched between me and my family. I did not answer. I let them wait, let the anticipation build, letting the injustice and my response exist in suspended time, a calculated absence that spoke louder than any argument. Hours passed, and I settled into my favorite chair, the soft leather embracing me as I allowed the quiet to settle around my thoughts, knowing that the most powerful moments often occurred when one chose not to act immediately, when the storm brewed quietly before the revelation. I replayed every moment, every phone call, every glance from my family that had made me feel sidelined, turning them over like tactical exercises in my mind, examining their motivations, their expectations, their overconfidence in assuming I would accept exclusion passively. This was the strategy, the patience, the careful orchestration that would turn a night of humiliation into a narrative of empowerment. And as I looked out the window, the moonlight reflecting off the pavement, I felt the tension of the evening coiling tightly, a spring ready to release, knowing that soon, very soon, Sophia would open the gift, and everything would change in ways they could never have anticipated. The reception hall shimmered under the soft golden lights, the clinking of glasses and laughter weaving a backdrop that should have been familiar and warm. Yet for me, it was like stepping into a scene from which I had been erased. I stayed at the edges, my presence invisible to most, a silent observer of the spectacle my parents had orchestrated without me. The flowers were arranged meticulously, every petal perfect, and the chairs aligned in neat rows, a picture of elegance that contrasted sharply with the turmoil twisting in my chest. I could see Sophia, radiant and smiling, walking down the aisle with a confidence I had always admired, yet the joy she radiated was a painful reminder that I was not meant to share in this moment. The whispers from distant relatives, the subtle nods, and the sidelong glances were like invisible chains, designed to remind me of my exclusion. I felt the familiar weight of disappointment and frustration pressing down, the same feeling I had faced countless times in my career when orders seemed impossible or colleagues underestimated me. But here, the battlefield was domestic, and the weapons were emotions and social expectation. I clutched my coat tighter around me, the fabric providing minimal comfort against the cold knot of injustice. I thought about Michael, how he had tried to reach me with a call that ended in hesitation and silence, and I understood that his loyalty was conflicted, pulled between family bonds and his love for me. Every laugh, every toast made in the hall, reverberated through me like a judgment, a declaration that my place had been intentionally denied. My mind raced through memories of family dinners where I had been dismissed, birthdays where my contributions were minimized, and holidays overshadowed by Sophia's achievements. These moments were small in isolation, but cumulative, forming a mosaic of exclusion that had now reached its apex. I walked slowly toward the gift I had left, making sure it was in plain sight, strategically placed to ensure it would be discovered at the exact right time, my heart a rhythm of anticipation and controlled anger. Each step was measured, a careful choreography honed from years of military precision, translating strategy into subtle domestic action. The gift was not merely a package, it was a statement, a quiet but undeniable assertion that my absence did not equate to irrelevance. As I returned to the shadows of the parking lot, I felt a surge of clarity, a mixture of vindication and nervous energy, knowing that the revelation would unfold exactly as I had envisioned, and that the power dynamic, however temporarily, had shifted in my favor. I watched the evening sky, the first stars appearing, twinkling like distant witnesses to the tension building below. The ambient sounds of the reception, soft music, the murmur of conversation, the clinking of cutlery became a rhythm that mirrored the internal pulse of anticipation I carried. Every passing second seemed elongated, each minute a stretching of suspense, the way silence can amplify every heartbeat, every footstep, every whispered word. I replayed scenarios in my mind, contemplating reactions from Sophia, my parents, and the extended family, understanding that the drama was not just about the gift itself, but about the revelation, the public recognition that my presence, though absent, could not be ignored. As the minutes ticked by, I felt the tension build like a coiled spring, the culmination of months, years even, of subtle exclusion and unfair treatment converging into a single, potent moment. I thought of Olivia and Daniel, their ambivalence and awkwardness, and I knew that the impact of what was about to happen would ripple through the family, forcing a confrontation that words alone had failed to achieve. The cool night air kissed my face as I drove slowly, every light passing by a reminder of the invisible boundary that had been drawn around me, and the determination that I would not be confined by it. I imagined the reactions, the shock, the disbelief, and the scrambling to understand the silent assertion of agency I had exercised, and I felt a flicker of satisfaction, tempered by the lingering anxiety of anticipation. This was not merely about a gift, it was a demonstration, a reclaiming of dignity, a quiet revolution enacted with precision and care, the way one might execute a critical mission with patience, timing, and strategy. And as I settled back into my apartment, watching the night deepen and the city quiet, I felt the tension coiling tighter, a sense of inevitability settling over me, knowing that soon, very soon, the outcome would reveal the truth that had long been simmering beneath the surface, and that everything they thought they controlled was about to be confronted in the most unexpected way. The evening deepened, and the reception hall was alive with the soft hum of conversation and the gentle clinking of glasses. Yet I remained hidden, a silent observer, my pulse quickened by the anticipation of what was about to unfold. I watched as Sophia laughed with our cousins, completely unaware that her carefully curated world was about to encounter a jolt she had not anticipated. My mind replayed every slight, every dismissive comment, every belittling remark from my parents and relatives, not as mere memories, but as fuel for the statement I was about to make. The gift, carefully positioned on a side table near the entrance to the main hall, waited silently, an innocuous package in appearance but potent in meaning, a vessel for the culmination of months of strategic planning and restraint. I felt a strange mixture of calm and exhilaration, knowing that I had chosen the path of patience over confrontation, letting my absence speak as loudly as my presence could have. The music swelled and then softened as a toast began, voices rising in celebration, and I imagined the moment Sophia would lift the lid of the box, the moment when her curated perception of superiority would collide with reality. I recalled Michael pacing outside, unsure how to intervene, his loyalty evident yet constrained by the delicate web of familial expectations and social etiquette. Every laugh that rang out, every clink of silverware, every gentle murmur of compliment toward Sophia heightened the tension, each sound a reminder that my place had been deliberately marginalized. I thought of Olivia and Daniel, both caught in the uncomfortable middle ground between loyalty and fear, their glances toward the gift unknowing, yet their reactions would soon amplify the drama of the revelation. As the minutes dragged, the gift became a symbol, not of malice, but of justice, a tangible testament to patience, strategy, and subtle assertion of agency. I imagined the expressions that would ripple across the room, the sharp intake of breath, the widening of eyes, and the sudden hush as the contents were revealed, the unspoken acknowledgement that my absence had not diminished my influence or significance. The evening sky darkened outside, the city lights casting a glow through the windows, reflecting faintly on the polished surfaces and delicate glassware, adding a cinematic quality to the tension that hung over the hall. I paced the perimeter of the room at a safe distance, feeling the familiar rhythm of calculation, evaluating the timing, the angle, and the social mechanics that would ensure the impact of the revelation reached every intended audience. The laughter softened, the conversation paused, subtle shifts in posture and attention, signaling that the moment was imminent, the coiled spring of anticipation ready to release. I felt a shiver of excitement at the thought of my carefully orchestrated plan coming to fruition, a quiet but undeniable triumph over the exclusion and belittlement I had endured. The air felt charged, heavy with expectation. Each breath I drew a measured exercise in control and patience. I watched Sophia lean toward the gift, unaware of the significance contained within, the room's atmosphere subtly shifting as curiosity took hold. the energy of impending revelation beginning to radiate outward. I remembered my training, the importance of patience, observation, and timing, and I knew that the unfolding of this moment would not only assert my presence, but recalibrate the perceptions held by my family, establishing a balance long denied. I stood back, the cool night air brushing my skin as I observed the delicate interplay of anticipation, emotion, and revelation, feeling the tension coil tighter and tighter, the quiet before the storm, where justice would be recognized, not through confrontation, but through strategic absence, and a perfectly timed statement of significance. And as the first gasp of surprise echoed from the reception hall, I allowed myself a subtle smile, knowing that the night had not ended, but a shift had begun, one that would redefine the dynamics and set the stage for the acknowledgement and respect I had long deserved. The moment Sophia lifted the lid of the gift, the room fell into a suspended silence, as though everyone had collectively held their breath in anticipation. The wrapping paper slipped aside to reveal a carefully curated collection of memories and documents that told a story no one in the family had fully acknowledged, a chronicle of the sacrifices, the unspoken contributions, and the moments of courage I had given to our family over the years. I watched from a distance as her smile faltered, the perfect composure she had maintained evaporating in an instant, replaced by confusion and disbelief. She let out a sharp intake of breath, followed by a quiet gasp, her eyes scanning each item in the box with a growing realization of its significance. The extended family shifted uneasily, sensing that something profound and unexpected had just interrupted the orchestrated narrative of celebration. I saw my parents, John and Margaret, their faces blanch as they slowly recognized the message embedded in the gift, a reflection not of malice but of recognition and validation that had been long denied. Michael, standing near the doorway, looked at me with a mixture of relief and pride, understanding without words the strategy and patience that had led to this moment. Each object in the gift seemed to speak directly, silently, yet loudly, to each observer, challenging assumptions, exposing oversights, and highlighting the inequities they had imposed. Sophia stumbled backward slightly, her usual confidence shaken as she grasped the depth of what she had just encountered, and the room seemed to collectively shift its attention toward the implications of my absence being more than symbolic. I felt a surge of quiet triumph, a validation not in the form of loud confrontation, but in the undeniable weight of truth made visible to everyone present. The energy in the room became palpable, a mix of astonishment, realization, and the subtle stirrings of guilt, each face reflecting a different reaction to the unfolding revelation. I observed as cousins and friends whispered, exchanged glances, and attempted to interpret the unexpected moment, the suspense lingering in the air, thick and electric. Even Olivia and Daniel, my siblings who had often been caught between loyalty and fear, exchanged looks that conveyed both surprise and recognition of the significance of the statement I had made without speaking a single word. The impact was far beyond a mere gift. It was a demonstration of agency, a reclaiming of dignity in a space where I had been deliberately marginalized, a strategic assertion that presence is not defined solely by physical attendance, but also by the recognition of one's contributions and importance. I felt the tension unwind slightly within me, replaced by a composed satisfaction, knowing that the narrative had shifted and the room now understood the weight of my perspective and the validity of my experiences. The evening continued, but the energy had changed. Every conversation, every gesture, every glance now carried the acknowledgement that my role, though previously minimized, could not be ignored. I remained in the shadows, observing, noting, absorbing each reaction, fully aware that this was a turning point, not just for the evening, but for the ongoing dynamics within my family. The interplay of surprise, realization, and subtle discomfort created a new landscape of understanding, one that positioned me not as the absent, overlooked member, but as someone whose patience, strategy, and quiet determination commanded attention and respect. The hall that had once been a symbol of exclusion now reflected a nuanced victory, the impact of calculated action and thoughtful preparation resonating through the room with clarity and precision. I breathed deeply, the satisfaction of the moment tempered by the awareness that true recognition is often gradual, built upon careful observation and strategic patience. and that the ripples of this evening would continue to influence the interactions and perceptions within my family long after the music and laughter had faded. Watching Sophia regain a semblance of composure, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly but the weight of understanding lingering in her expression, I felt a sense of closure settle over me, a quiet affirmation that justice, subtle yet undeniable, had been enacted in the most effective manner possible. And as the evening progressed, I remained observant, acknowledging the power of timing, the significance of patience, and the extraordinary impact of letting absence and carefully placed presence create a moment that would be remembered, discussed, and felt for years to come, a turning point that transformed a night of exclusion into a statement of recognition, respect, and subtle triumph. As the evening progressed, the energy in the hall shifted, a quiet tension replacing the celebratory chatter, and I found myself observing not only the reactions of my immediate family, but also the ripple effects across the extended circle of friends and relatives. Each conversation seemed to pause momentarily as whispers traveled, subtle glances exchanged across tables, and the realization of my presence, though indirect, settled into the awareness of everyone present. I noticed Sophia trying to regain her composure, yet the unease in her expression revealed that the impact of the gift lingered, a reminder that actions, no matter how silently executed, carry weight. My parents, John and Margaret, appeared unsettled, their eyes darting toward each other as they processed the implications of the contents, understanding that their attempt to marginalize me had backfired and the power dynamic subtly shifted. Michael, standing near the edge of the crowd, gave a small nod, a gesture of recognition and support, acknowledging that patience, strategy, and careful timing had transformed what could have been a night of humiliation into a moment of undeniable personal agency and dignity. I observed cousins, aunts, and uncles whispering in clusters, their curiosity mixed with astonishment, as they pieced together the narrative presented by the carefully selected items in the gift, a narrative of commitment, sacrifice, and unacknowledged contributions that could not be ignored. Olivia and Daniel, my siblings, exchanged looks that conveyed both surprise and admiration, an unspoken recognition of the deliberate and measured choice I had made, transforming absence into a statement more potent than any verbal confrontation. The room seemed to collectively hold its breath, the subtle tension thickening, a shared realization that the carefully maintained social hierarchy had been challenged in a manner both precise and effective, demonstrating that respect and recognition are earned not merely through presence, but through strategic assertion of self-worth. I could feel the impact radiating through the hall, the subtle shift in attention and perception, a testament to the efficacy of patience and the deliberate orchestration of moments that demand attention without direct engagement. The ambient sounds of the hall's soft laughter, the shuffle of chairs, the low hum of music acted as a backdrop to the unfolding drama, each note amplifying the significance of the revelation and the quiet triumph it represented. I thought of the long months of careful planning, the decision to maintain composure, and the deliberate choice to let the absent speak louder than confrontation, each factor culminating in a moment that was as strategic as it was emotionally resonant. I remained observant, noting the reactions, subtle shifts in posture, the small involuntary gestures of acknowledgement and surprise, all reinforcing the unspoken message that patience, resilience, and timing can transform what is meant to diminish into a platform for empowerment. My gaze swept across the room, cataloging expressions, noting the subtle reordering of attention and influence, aware that the gift had achieved its intended purpose, turning a moment of exclusion into an affirmation of dignity and personal authority. The evening continued, yet the air carried a different weight, a sense of equilibrium restored through strategic presence and absence, each guest now subtly recalibrating their perception of the family dynamics and my role within them. I felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of validation that transcended the immediate reactions, understanding that true recognition often manifests through indirect but undeniable actions, that the demonstration of worth need not be loud to be transformative. And as the night deepened, the city lights casting gentle reflections through the windows, I allowed myself to embrace the calm after the storm, the subtle victory of strategy over impulse, patience over reaction, and the assertion of self-respect in a space that had long sought to undermine it. knowing that this night had forever shifted the balance and would be remembered as a turning point in the ongoing narrative of family, perception, and respect. As the night unfolded, the air in the reception hall grew heavier with the weight of revelation, and I could sense every guest subtly recalibrating their perception of the evening. Sophia remained frozen, her hands hovering near the items she had uncovered, the realization of my calculated presence without physical attendance slowly settling across her features. My parents, John and Margaret, exchanged glances that conveyed both disbelief and a dawning understanding that their attempt to diminish me had failed in the most public way possible. Michael stayed nearby, his eyes reflecting pride and relief, silently acknowledging the meticulous thought and patience I had exercised to turn absence into undeniable influence. The whispers and sideways glances of cousins and extended relatives intensified, each subtle conversation a ripple in the social fabric of the event, a shared recognition that the dynamics had shifted. I could see Olivia and Daniel, my siblings, reacting with surprise and an unspoken admiration, understanding that the gesture, though silent, carried more weight than any verbal confrontation could have achieved. The room seemed to contract around the collective tension, each breath and movement measured, the energy vibrating with the recognition of a power subtly reasserted. I felt a profound sense of calm and satisfaction, knowing that the gift had performed its role with precision, articulating the narrative of my contributions, sacrifices, and agency that had been long overlooked. The atmosphere shifted, not through loud declarations, but through the quiet, undeniable proof of strategy and patience, and I felt the profound impact of actions taken thoughtfully, timed perfectly to create maximum resonance. The soft glow of the lights, reflected in polished surfaces and glassware, casting gentle illuminations that seemed to accentuate the subtle reactions of each guest, highlighting astonishment, curiosity, and the subtle embarrassment of those who had underestimated my presence. Every gesture, every glance, every moment of hesitation in the room reinforced the narrative that absence did not equate to insignificance, and that deliberate action could convey messages more powerful than words. I remained in the background, absorbing the subtleties, aware that the night had transformed from a scene of exclusion into a demonstration of recognition and validation. The reactions were layered and complex, the interplay of surprise, guilt, curiosity, and quiet respect weaving a tapestry that would persist beyond this single evening. My mind cataloged each expression, each whispered comment, and each subtle movement, understanding that the power of patience and indirect influence had manifested fully. I thought of the long-term effects, how this moment would ripple through family interactions, subtly altering perceptions and forcing a reassessment of authority, recognition, and value within our familial structure. The music continued to provide a soft, steady backdrop, but the emotional tempo had shifted dramatically, the significance of the gift's revelation permeating every corner of the hall. I felt the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished without confrontation, a strategic assertion of self that demanded acknowledgement, respect, and recalibration from those who had sought to diminish me. The night carried on, yet the undercurrent of tension and recognition remained, a reminder that influence and power can be exercised thoughtfully, strategically, and silently. Each sip of wine, each polite conversation, each shared glance carried the new weight of understanding, subtle yet unmistakable, that I had reasserted my presence in a manner impossible to ignore. The realization that my carefully planned absence had created such a profound effect filled me with both relief and empowerment, the culmination of meticulous preparation meeting the unpredictability of human response. I allowed myself a moment to breathe, the cool night air outside brushing against my skin as I observed the transformed dynamics from a discreet vantage point, appreciating the subtle, powerful shift in energy and respect. The evening, once poised to highlight exclusion, now illuminated the quiet, deliberate assertion of dignity and agency, a demonstration that strategic action, patience, and understanding of timing can redefine relationships and influence without a single word spoken. And as I stepped back, watching the room adjust, react, and acknowledge the presence that had been silently felt all along, I understood that the night had become more than an event. It was a turning point, a testament to resilience, careful planning, and the quiet triumph of measured action. The night deepened around the reception hall, and the reactions to the gift continued to unfold. Each subtle movement, each whispered remark magnifying the weight of the moment. I remained at a distance, yet acutely aware of the undercurrents shifting within the room, the collective energy transforming from light celebration to quiet reflection and astonishment. Sophia, still holding the items, hesitated before setting them down, her composure partially returning, but the uncertainty in her eyes betrayed the impact of the revelation, the realization that the carefully constructed hierarchy she had relied upon was disrupted in the most understated yet undeniable way. I noticed my parents, John and Margaret, shifting their stance, exchanging a glance that carried both surprise and a hint of remorse, the silent acknowledgement that their decisions had unintended consequences and that the narrative they had attempted to control had been reframed by a patient and deliberate act. Michael stayed near the periphery, a reassuring presence, his expression conveying both pride and relief, silently recognizing the meticulous strategy that had turned my absence into a profound statement of agency and influence. The extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, and close friends, leaned in toward each other, their eyes flicking between Sophia and the gift, murmuring with curiosity and amazement as they processed the significance of what had just occurred, the subtle yet powerful assertion of presence despite physical absence. Olivia and Daniel, my siblings, displayed expressions of quiet admiration, their realization of the intention and effort behind my actions fostering a respect that had often been delayed or unspoken, a recognition of the agency and strategic thinking I had applied. The room itself seemed to adjust, the energy shifting from celebration to contemplation, the whispers and side glances reinforcing the understanding that power and influence are not always asserted through direct confrontation, but often through careful observation, timing, and subtle demonstration. I felt a growing sense of calm satisfaction, understanding that the evening had provided a platform to reclaim my dignity, to highlight contributions and sacrifices that had long been overlooked, and to establish a balance that words alone could not achieve. Every gesture, every glance, every moment of hesitation and attention now carried the acknowledgement of my role and significance, the subtle authority that had been exercised without overt confrontation or declaration. The glow of the lights, the reflections on the polished surfaces, and the gentle movement of guests added a cinematic quality to the unfolding realization, each visual element enhancing the resonance of the moment and the strategic placement of the gift. I observed the collective adjustment, noting the layers of emotion, from surprise to contemplation to subtle recognition, the interplay of expressions demonstrating the profound influence of measured patience and deliberate action. The atmosphere was thick with the quiet intensity of acknowledgement, each conversation and interaction subtly shaped by the understanding that my careful orchestration had succeeded in reframing perceptions and recalibrating family dynamics. I breathed deeply, feeling the release of tension alongside a steady satisfaction, recognizing that the calculated absence and the timing of revelation had achieved a lasting impact, transforming a night of exclusion into a moment of empowerment and respect. As I watched the evening continue, the subtle shifts in attention and behavior reinforcing the strategic assertion of presence, I felt the profound effect of patience, preparation, and thoughtful execution, the quiet power of actions designed to speak louder than words, and the realization that the dynamics of respect and recognition within my family had been irrevocably altered by this carefully orchestrated moment. The night carried on, but the undercurrent of reflection and recognition persisted, a testament to the effectiveness of restraint, timing, and strategic influence. And as I finally stepped back to observe from a distance, I felt a deep, enduring sense of accomplishment, knowing that the statement had been made with precision, subtlety, and undeniable impact. The energy in the hall had shifted completely, the initial shock of the revelation settling into a tense quiet where every guest seemed aware that the balance of attention and recognition had subtly tilted. Sophia was still processing, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the items back in the box, her carefully maintained composure fracturing with each passing second, and I could see the realization in her eyes that my absence had been more powerful than any confrontation could have been. My parents, John and Margaret, stood together but awkwardly, their previous authority and attempts to control the narrative now undermined by the undeniable weight of the gift, and their faces revealed a mixture of regret, surprise, and the dawning comprehension that the hierarchy they assumed was intact had been gently but irreversibly disrupted. Michael lingered near the edges, his expression one of pride and quiet admiration, understanding fully the strategy I had employed, the patience, the timing, and the subtle assertion of presence that had transformed what could have been a moment of humiliation into an undeniable victory of dignity. Across the room, whispers flowed like a current, spreading from table to table, the subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement that my actions had communicated something profound without a single word being uttered. Olivia and Daniel, my siblings, exchanged looks that conveyed both surprise and newfound respect, a recognition that the careful orchestration, the deliberate patience, and the understanding of timing had produced an impact far more resonant than any loud protest or complaint could have achieved. The room itself seemed to pulse with the new energy, a collective realization that influence and presence are not always enacted through direct engagement, but sometimes through thoughtful, measured action that allows absence to speak volumes and statements to unfold naturally. Every subtle shift in posture, every glance toward the gift, every careful observation of the reactions of others reinforced the understanding that power and recognition had been redefined in the space, not through confrontation but through strategic agency. I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me, the quiet pride of executing a plan that emphasized dignity, patience, and precision, and the recognition that the ripple effects of this moment would extend beyond the evening, subtly shaping family dynamics and interactions for the future. The lighting in the hall, soft and warm, reflected across polished surfaces, glassware, and the carefully arranged floral displays, adding a cinematic quality to the reactions and allowing every nuance of expression to be seen, appreciated, and felt by those present. I observed the extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, and friends, noting the mixture of curiosity, astonishment, and reflection on their faces, the quiet shift in attention toward the statement that had been delivered not by presence, but by thoughtful orchestration. The music and ambient conversation became a subtle backdrop to the deeper, more meaningful interactions that were now taking place, as guests recalibrated their understanding of the evening and the family dynamics at play. I felt a steady calm, the culmination of strategic planning, patience, and awareness coalescing into a moment of undeniable influence, the quiet power of absence articulated through the tangible and meaningful gesture I had left behind. The interplay of surprise, reflection, acknowledgement, and subtle embarrassment created a rich tapestry of human response, each reaction reinforcing the significance of careful timing and deliberate action, and I watched with a sense of fulfillment as the family collectively absorbed the impact. Every subtle gesture, each quiet exclamation, and every whispered observation contributed to the understanding that respect, recognition, and attention can be claimed not only through presence, but also through strategic and thoughtful intervention. I noted the recalibration in the eyes and posture of my parents, the careful awareness in the movements of Sophia, the subtle admiration in the glances of Olivia and Daniel, and the quiet pride emanating from Michael, each element a testament to the successful execution of an indirect yet profound influence. As the evening carried on, I remained an observer from the periphery, feeling the satisfaction of the narrative I had carefully crafted unfolding exactly as intended, the impact reaching further than any direct confrontation ever could, transforming a night of exclusion into a lasting statement of dignity, strategy, and respect. And as I watched the room adjust, the quiet recognition settle across faces, and the energy of the evening subtly transform, I knew that the careful orchestration, patience, and thoughtful timing had not only reshaped this event, but had permanently altered the perception of my role, influence, and presence within the family, a profound affirmation of agency achieved without a single word. The night had settled into a quiet rhythm, the soft murmur of conversation and the gentle clinking of glass providing a backdrop to the unfolding realization that the evening had been transformed by my strategic absence. I remained at the periphery, observing, noting the subtle shifts in posture, expression, and attention that marked a profound recalibration of perception and influence among my family. Sophia, still processing, glanced around the room with a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension, the confident poise she had carried so effortlessly, now tempered by the unexpected weight of what she had encountered. My parents, John and Margaret, exchanged silent, tense glances, their expressions betraying a blend of surprise, reflection, and a recognition that their earlier authority and control had been subtly undermined, replaced by an acknowledgement of the thoughtfulness and impact of my actions. Michael stood close, a quiet pillar of support, his eyes conveying both pride and relief, silently affirming the precision and patience that had guided my approach, the subtle assertion of agency that had shifted the dynamics of the night without confrontation. The extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends, continued their quiet observations, the gentle murmurs and exchanged glances carrying the unspoken understanding that the narrative of the evening had been reshaped in a manner both subtle and irreversible. Olivia and Daniel, my siblings, shared looks of respect and acknowledgement, their understanding of the deliberate patience and calculated timing, reinforcing the quiet power of actions taken thoughtfully, the demonstration that absence can communicate far more than presence when employed strategically. The atmosphere itself seemed to hold its breath, the gentle hum of conversation interspersed with moments of reflection and surprise, the collective awareness of the family and friends adjusting to the recalibrated hierarchy and recognition. I could feel the satisfaction of deliberate action, the calm fulfillment of a carefully executed plan, the knowledge that patience, timing, and strategic foresight had produced a resonance that words alone could never achieve. Each glance, each subtle expression, each hesitant gesture now carried the acknowledgement of the significance of the moment, the effectiveness of a statement made without a word, a quiet but unmistakable assertion of self-worth and influence. The lighting reflected softly off polished surfaces and the delicate floral arrangements, casting gentle shadows that highlighted the nuances of human expression, adding a cinematic quality to the unfolding acknowledgement of presence and power. I observed the layers of reaction, from subtle shock to contemplation to quiet admiration, each response reinforcing the effectiveness of the patient and deliberate orchestration that had turned what could have been a night of exclusion into a testament of dignity and recognition. The music and ambient sounds provided a gentle continuity, yet the emotional weight had shifted, a quiet intensity replacing the initial celebration as the implications of my strategic action rippled through the room. I felt the steady assurance that the demonstration of patience, subtlety, and timing had permanently influenced perceptions, creating a lasting acknowledgement of contribution, presence, and authority that could not be dismissed. The recalibration of attention, respect, and recognition extended to every corner of the hall, each subtle interaction reflecting the power of thoughtful, measured action. I breathed deeply, allowing the calm and satisfaction to settle over me, and aware that the strategic execution of this moment had created an enduring impact, reshaping family dynamics and perceptions in a profound and lasting manner. The night carried on, yet the reverberations of the subtle assertion of agency continued to resonate, each interaction, glance, and gesture, a reminder that influence and respect are often earned, not through confrontation but through patience, preparation, and careful observation. And as I stood back, observing the evening transform into a moment of quiet empowerment and validation, I knew that the deliberate orchestration, the strategic timing, and the thoughtful execution had succeeded in asserting my presence and authority in a way that would be remembered, respected, and understood for years to come. The reactions in the hall continued to evolve as the evening progressed, the initial shock of the revelation giving way to a deeper, more reflective atmosphere where every guest seemed to reassess their perceptions and expectations. I remained on the edges, keenly observing the subtle transformations in body language, expressions, and conversation, each small movement reinforcing the impact of the statement I had made through absence and carefully placed action. Sophia, still near the gift, now carried a visible weight in her expression, her poised confidence tempered by the realization that the narrative she had assumed was immutable had shifted dramatically, and that my actions had quietly yet effectively challenged her perception of control and authority. My parents, John and Margaret, exchanged private glances, their faces marked by an uneasy combination of realization and introspection, the subtle acknowledgement that their efforts to sideline me had been undercut by a measured and strategic demonstration of presence and influence. Michael remained near, a steady and quiet support, his expression a mix of pride and relief, silently affirming the careful planning, patience, and timing that had transformed a potentially humiliating scenario into a moment of undeniable validation. Across the hall, the extended family cousins, aunts, uncles, and friends whispered among themselves, the murmur of conversations carrying the subtle acknowledgement that the dynamics had shifted, that recognition and respect had been recalibrated by the indirect assertion of agency and dignity I had enacted. Olivia and Daniel exchanged subtle looks, their expressions a blend of surprise and respect, understanding the deliberate strategy and patient execution that had enabled me to reclaim authority and acknowledgement without verbal confrontation. The room itself seemed to absorb the tension, the soft hum of background music and polite chatter, punctuated by moments of reflection, hesitation, and quiet admiration, the collective awareness of the guests creating a shared understanding of the significance of the evening. I felt a profound sense of accomplishment, the quiet satisfaction of witnessing the long-planned impact unfold naturally, the recognition that actions taken thoughtfully and timed precisely could resonate far more than any overt assertion of self. Each glance, each hesitant movement, each subtle gesture reinforced the narrative of dignity, resilience, and calculated influence, a silent testament to the effectiveness of patience and strategic positioning in reshaping perceptions and social dynamics. The lighting in the hall accentuated the subtle shifts, reflections dancing across glassware and polished surfaces, highlighting the nuances of expression, the astonishment, curiosity, and cautious acknowledgement of my presence, even in absence. I observed the extended network of family and friends adjusting to the new awareness, noting the change in energy and focus, the soft recalibration of attention and influence that had resulted from my deliberate choices. The atmosphere, previously filled with straightforward celebration, now carried a layered intensity, a quiet recognition of the strategic assertion of personal agency and the subtle transformation of relationships and authority. I allowed myself to feel the steady satisfaction of accomplishment, understanding that the patient and deliberate orchestration of this moment had reshaped perceptions, recalibrated respect, and established a new equilibrium of recognition that would persist beyond the evening itself. The quiet power of absence, the meticulous attention to timing and context, and the careful selection of meaningful action had created a lasting statement, reinforcing that influence is often exercised most effectively through thoughtful planning rather than overt confrontation. As the night continued, I observed the ripple effects, the subtle acknowledgement, the recalibration of posture and focus, and the shared understanding that my carefully executed demonstration of patience and agency had permanently altered the perception of my role and presence within the family. The evening had become more than an event. It was a deliberate and measured assertion of identity, respect, and dignity, an enduring affirmation of personal agency that subtly but unmistakably transformed the social landscape around me, leaving a legacy of recognition that would not soon be forgotten. The echoes of that night still linger with me, quiet but persistent, reminding me of the resilience I had discovered within myself and the boundaries I had learned to define. Life did not suddenly become perfect. My parents and Sophia were still part of my world, and some conversations remained unspoken, but there was clarity in my steps, a peace in knowing that my value was not determined by their approval. I learned that self-respect and the courage to assert your presence can shift even the most rigid dynamics, and that independence is nurtured through thoughtful patience, awareness, and trusting your own intuition. If you are listening and feel overlooked, dismissed, or betrayed, know that it is not a reflection of your worth. You have the right to protect your heart, your emotions, and your space. Listen to your inner voice, honor your needs, and take small steps toward reclaiming your agency. Healing does not come all at once, but in quiet affirmations, in standing firm in who you are, in refusing to let anyone else define your value. Let this story be a reminder that the universe often aligns when you act with integrity and courage, and that even in absence, your presence can resonate profoundly. I hope you feel seen, understood, and less alone as you navigate your own struggles and assert your rightful place in your life and family. Thank you for listening, for allowing me to share this journey, and for walking alongside me through the twists of trust, betrayal, and reclamation. May you always remember that your autonomy, awareness, and self-worth are sacred and untouchable, and may you find strength in each step toward your own peace. Please feel free to comment, share, or subscribe if this story resonates with your heart and your experiences. Emily Carter, 30, and the core lesson I want to leave you with is, your worth is never defined by others, only by yourself.